Hello, everyone. My name's Duncan White. I'm the managing editor of the International Fire and Safety Journal, and I'm delighted this afternoon to be hosting a podcast with Finn Len Harung from Survitec. Finn, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Duncan. Pleasure to be here.
It is. I am delighted. It's certainly something that since we talked about this podcast, I've been giving some research to and read with interest the paper that came out in relation to the issue at safety at sea and the headline catching topic, if you like, about why are the fires not going out. And I've never been shy at putting headline grabbing titles, because if that's what it takes to pull somebody in to look at it and face facts, then that's got to be good. So the new white paper, Why the Fire's Not Going Out, it caused a stir in Athens earlier in the year in June at the Posidonia event. Tell us a little bit more about that. I'm always interested to hear when people ruffle feathers.
Yeah, no, and I can't personally take credit for the title, but the honest truth is that it's true. I mean, the fires are up year on year, actually 20%, and it's not us saying that. It's from Alliance Insurance in their annual report. And unfortunately, while most are contained, some are not, and it can be devastating. I mean, to life and the environment, but also to cost. I mean, if you look at the 5-year period, we're looking at 9.2 billion euros in cost from fires at sea, which, I mean, A, is enormous, and B, if you allow me, is a little bit ironic. I know you deal with fire on lots of sides, but when I came into shipping, I thought, well, you're out at sea, you have water all around you. Surely fire can't be a major issue. But by God, it can be catastrophic when the fire catches on the ship.
Very much so. It's again that example there. You've got a ship sat in the middle of an ocean with water all around it, and we still manage to see a fire that has a devastating effect and takes a ship down. The issue with that, and in terms of why. Do you feel that it's the equipment that's not being maintained effectively? Do you feel that there's complacency in respect of the captain and the crew, or is there something more specific you can put your finger on?
Well, I definitely don't think it's intended. I don't think anybody on board a ship would deliberately not do the right things. That's for sure. And I also think it is mixed. I mean, the technology definitely is one part of it. The alternative fuels coming in, the ionized batteries, some more dangerous and perhaps wrongly labeled cargoes and containers. There are kind of external outside factors increasing the risk of fire. But what we're focusing on in the white paper we released is that I think the industry knows about these risks. It's becoming aware of it. What I don't think it completely appreciates, and what we so clearly see from our service technicians that do hundreds of these jobs every week, is that a lot of it is also that the equipment isn't working the way it should when there is a fire, which of course can be the difference between a small incident and a catastrophic one.
Very much so. And again, when you look at potentially the root cause of fires, both at sea or on land, very often the causation or the resulting loss is put down to the inability of the fixed systems to be used correctly. And through my career, the rusting up of outlet valves on dry and wet risers, etc., was a common issue. And I suppose that where we put in place inspection measures where a crew member will inspect the product to see that it's physically there, that doesn't necessarily tell him or her that it's going to actually work. And this is where the the need for that inspection by competent professionals is really paramount in the importance of safety.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And I mean, you definitely see it on some of the older ships where kind of the effect of seawater over years can rust the inside, or the use of wrong parts or wrong equipment that is not fitted for what it's supposed to do later on in the life of a ship can really have a really bad effect. But more surprisingly, and what we actually see quite often as well, is on brand new ships. The ship has left the yard, but the CO2 hoses weren't connected again after the initial commissioning. Or we had a case a few weeks ago where we went in to inspect the foam tank, and we realized that the cap on the new equipment hadn't been removed. So honestly, if you turn that system on, it would never have worked. And this isn't due to kind of wear and tear. It is an error once it was installed.
So I'm reading into that, and it's a bit like post-commissioning inspections, as I would know the term to be used. That you take over ownership, and I can liken it to buying a new house and having a snagging list. And I suppose the only way you know about that snagging list or the snags is if you go around and inspect them immediately. That said, is there? I'm taking that the answer is going to be no here, but is there a requirement for a ship to have another inspection post maintenance or post launch?
There is a requirement at the shipyard stage when it leaves, but often it's the same people that have installed it. And again, I don't think anybody cuts corners here deliberately, but it's a little bit like grading your own homework at times. It can be a bit risky. So we do see customers that call us in as a third party and just ask, nothing against the yard or whoever made the installment, but it's too important not to do that double check, because most cases it will be a year before you inspect it, and that's a long time to go without insurance.
It's a long time to go playing Russian roulette, if you like, to ensure that the system is working properly. And when you look at it, the cost of that inspection versus the investment made for the actual vessel itself, just there's no correlation, and it just doesn't make sense. And I think that if I was going to be investing in that sort of money, I'd be wanting to make sure that everything worked properly when I wanted it to work, rather than taking the chance that somebody put the hose on or took the cap off.
I couldn't agree more, Duncan. But the irony of it is, as important as safety is, it will always remain a cost because it doesn't generate you more revenue. It doesn't give you more cargo in your holds, and because of that, you would always have a big push to keep them down. And I'm the same with my costs. So again, I'm not blaming anyone. But it is quite complex. It is vital that it works. Otherwise, the risk and the cost associated with that risk is enormous. In the worst cases, there's a fire. But also, if there's a port state control and they uncover these gaps, you will be detained in port. And that's another key stat we see. The amount of fire deficiencies that is uncovered in port state controls, also leading to port detentions, is increasing. It is substantial. So, I would probably call that the better cases, because at the end of the day, that's money. It's not life. But it is a relatively small cost to make sure it works properly. And there are options to use there.
And like you quite rightly said there, in respect of the small costs, I also look at times about the whole issue of validity of insurance. and whether the insurer, if the insurer is expected to pay out on a loss, and then it's discovered that the loss was due to the failure to maintain the vital safety equipment on the ship, whether that would then have an impact on the insurer's payments. And it's also, I always like, and have written extensively in respect to safety, is that safety in itself is like an insurance policy. You're putting in place that level of reassurance that you're getting a set of independent eyes, hopefully competent independent eyes with the credibility to sign the certificate to say that this inspection was carried out. And when we're talking about the differing in scales between the cost of an inspection and the cost of replacing a vessel, then it beggars belief why it's not done as a matter of course. But that said, in the perfect world, we wouldn't be having these discussions.
No, and then it is complex to know. I mean, on the face of it, if you work in purchasing or procurement, you cover many categories. It's difficult to know who is a good supplier, who is a more risky supplier. Many of them can have proper approvals, MED certification, class certification, and yet, I mean, talking to our technicians, they go on board relatively newly certified equipment, and they find error after error. So there's clearly more serious and less serious players out there, and that's not easy for somebody that just deals with it every now and then to uncover.
No, but I also think that in terms of due diligence, the person looking to procure the services also shares a responsibility to undertake some due diligence to look at the companies that are out there. And when you're looking at what you need to provide the certification for in terms of this life safety equipment, it's that little bit of extra attention to dot the I's and cross the T's to make sure that you're getting a well-known name, or even going to get some witness testimony from people that have used other companies, just to make sure that it actually does what it says on the tin.
No, that is a good approach. And if I could add two things that I would do, I mean, A is look at their documentation. I mean, good quality companies will have a detailed list of what work they actually do and reference to the relevant regulation, so that you're sure it's done in accordance with the rules and regulation. The second kind of red flag, I'm not saying don't do it, but at least kind of raise your eyes. Sometimes I hear from customers that, I don't know, this is 50% cheaper. It's not that type of margins in this business. If something is 50% cheaper, then they're not doing the same thing. So either they've reinvented how to do inspections, or they're cutting corners. I'm going to speed that strike, to be honest.
And the worrying trend of driving to the bottom in relation to pricing within safety is just such a huge area of concern, and quite rightly, the level of knowledge, understanding, and experience required to undertake this kind of work, and to do it in a way that is seen as being industry practice, then it's going to have a price tag that isn't going to be cheap as chips, and that goes for itself. And I very often receive phone calls from people in respect of, fire safety is my area of specialism, in respect of what should I be paying for a fire risk assessment. And I said, well, it's all proportionate. Are you risk assessing the Buckingham Palace, or are you risk assessing a corner shop? It's going to be proportionate to the amount of work. But you can normally say that if the price is surprisingly low, then it's going to set the alarm bells ringing and the red flag waving, as you quite rightly said. From an inexperienced bystander, What are the challenges in respect of this faced by owners and managers of the vessels?
Well, I think we covered a couple of them, but if I can kind of go a level higher, obviously it can be quite complex knowing what equipment you need on board for different fuels for sure, but also according to legislation with the cargo you have on board, with the trade areas you go in, with the class and flag that you have, and then later on, obviously during the sailing days, what needs to be inspected when, what needs to be done. I mean, IMO and SOLAS set kind of the minimum, but U.S. Coast Guard, MED, Red Ensign now, class and flag, OEMs. There's so many different requirements that comes into the picture that it makes it complex for someone to know exactly what needs to be done when, what is best practice, what is a requirement, and what is kind of, as you rightly say, cheap insurance.
Yes, and I suppose, and you talked about there about the cargo, and with the ever increasing technology advancements, I suppose lithium-ion batteries is one that's is very much in the news, and I've seen, as many of our listeners will have seen, the reports of the vessels carrying lithium-ion batteries, or vehicles with lithium-ion batteries, and the fires involved. That in itself must present challenges to the owners and managers of these vessels in ensuring that they've got that right equipment to deal with the necessary risks that they're carrying. And is that something that that advice and guidance is also provided by you guys in terms of what do we need to ensure that we're doing the best to maintain safety?
No, absolutely. It's been a hot topic for a few years now, and something we invest and investigate quite thoroughly. And I mean, the honest answer is that it's not that it's more flammable or ignites more often than other types of vehicles or cargoes, but it's the fact that when it catches fire, it's very, very difficult to contain. So it's super important to have early detection, to find any kind of signs of faulty equipment, damages to the batteries, and then to contain it if something should occur, to cool it. Conventional, heavily used fire systems such as CO2 is typically limited in the amount of discharges that it has. And of course, with the type of nature that lithium batteries have, they can often reignite. And if you've already used your CO2 load, you are in trouble. So we typically advise water mist there to keep cooling it. And then there you can, of course, attach to the seawater should you run out of the water you have on board.
You know, this is interesting. I've been doing work with a couple of clients recently in respect of vehicle fires, not just lithium-ion battery power, but also hybrids and traditional fossil fuels. And one of the areas that we're looking at is the new fire blankets that have come on the market now, and there are. Like everything, there's the Rolls Royce down to the Mini. No disrespect to the Mini, but you get what you pay for. And what we're seeing is that where you've got, especially owners of premises where they've got underground car parks, they've got the ability to very quickly deploy a fire blanket and in effect smother that fire, stop it spreading to adjacent vehicles. And that in itself cuts down the environmental impact with the amount of toxic smoke, cuts down the need to put horrendous quantities of water onto it, and also buys time for the emergency services to make an attendance. Is fire blankets being seen as a potential option for lithium ion on board ships?
It's definitely on our list, and I'm not going to say too much on it because I'm not the expert on it. But there is the challenge that usually there's no people around the cars on board ships. I mean, potentially on a ferry, but definitely the vehicle carriers, the ro-ro carriers. I mean, they're in the engine room. They're on the deck. They're not down in the cargo holds. So it would take you quite a bit of time to get down there. And of course, these can be very, very rapid.
Yeah, there, and I can see the challenges that being on a vessel on water with the limited amount of personnel can cause. Well, that was we've covered some great stuff so far, and the ability for you to raise the topic at the event in Athens was that a purposeful timing of raising it to coincide with that event, or was there some other factor involved?
Well, it's always great to raise these things when the community is together. That's when you create the buzz, if you will. So that was definitely purposeful. But I mean, it's been on our agenda for quite some time. I mean, I must give it to our experts and technicians, not just from our company, from across the industry. The knowledge they have, the insight they bring, it's just too good to keep in-house. We wanted to share it. We wanted to kind of say, what can you actually do about it? And I think the reason why it's getting more attention now than it probably did if you go 5-10 years back is this introduction of new technology, new fuels, autonomous ships coming into the market. It brings it more on the top of the agenda than probably what we would have seen a decade ago.
And it's also interesting. I from my 30 years in the fire service, and I think that the last decade we've seen the emergence of new technology that has overtaken the ability for us to deal with it effectively when it becomes an issue. One of it I want to touch on with you now, and it might be going off script slightly, but it's I've been doing some work in relation to new buildings. Do you get called in at design stage to assist in ensuring that vessels have got the right level of safety?
I would say more and more, but still, I mean, some companies live with the ship throughout the vessel lifetime. I mean, they have a new build department. They design a certain ship for a specific route or a specific cargo or a specific segment. But lots of other companies don't operate like that. They buy secondhand, or they trade with either a vessel ship management or cargoes. They're not necessarily involved in that stage. And in many cases there, it's a money game. How do you make it commercial sense out of it? Yeah. So I definitely recognize what you say. We have a program we call Head Start, where we work with the owners and operators to facilitate some of that and make you understand kind of the through life opportunities and risks. But it's not something we can come completely away from just because of the nature. Just because, I mean, most ship managers, for instance, don't get involved until the ship is delivered. And then the only thing you can do is ensure that it is actually working as it was designed. There's no faulty parts. There's no lack of service, no lack of training on the personnel. I mean, those really are the factors that you can then work with.
So we've certainly looked in depth there. As we look to wind this up, Finn, what advice can you offer ship owners in relation to safety? If we were going to draw everything together here and say as a final remark in relation to ship owners, what would you give them?
Well, I think we talked about many of the key aspects here. I mean, what is the maintenance routine you have on board your ship? do the crew on board know the equipment, know how it's operated, know how it's maintained? Are they involved with the people that come on board and do service? Because I mean, they will much quicker be able to say if somebody is serious or not serious. I think my plea is also partially to the industry as a whole, which is why one of the key reasons why we published this white paper. I don't think it can only be up to the individual ship owner. I think the industry as a whole needs to come together and set stricter, more stringent standards for how is certain equipment serviced. What type of equipment do you actually need to service it? Because that's another thing we see very often. Somebody claims to have serviced something, but actually they didn't have the machine to pressure test that mast, or they said they pressure tested the CO2 cylinder, but they can't have done because the buttons were just on for an hour. It takes much more than that to do it. We need to weed out the less serious players and make sure the players who are in the industry follows the same standard. I mean, for us, it's a question of a level playing field. But for the owners and operators out there, it's a question of safety on board their ship, avoiding those risks, avoiding those fires, and avoiding setting people on board's lives at risk.
Yeah, it's taking responsibility and ownership for the vessel, and also looking at that with life and cargo safety. I'm conscious, Finn, that we've talked about a lot of things, but is there anything else that you would like to just touch upon in relation to why the fire's not going out and the white paper? I don't want to wind this up and then I sit back and think, I wish we discussed this. So is there anything else we should talk about before we wind this up?
No, I just want to thank you, Duncan, for setting this on the agenda and taking the serious publications like yours do really make a difference in the industry. And I love that you guys focus not just on the maritime industry, but the whole industry, because we can also learn so much from what we do onshore and in other industries. So thank you, Duncan.
I get to speak to some great professionals across all spectrums of the fire industry, and you're my first maritime, and I hope that we get future opportunities to chat again. I like it when companies are quite happy to throw pebbles in the pond and set the waves going.
Thank you for having me, Duncan. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you, Finn. I'm Duncan White, and I've had the pleasure this afternoon of speaking to Finn Len Harung from Survitec. We've been looking at all the issues around maritime safety, and in particular, why the fires are not going out in reference to the very thought-provoking white paper released in June by the company. Thank you very much.